Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1235, Wondrous Sight. Sunny had a nightmare again. Waking up in cold sweat, he couldn't remember what he had dreamt about, but was momentarily paralyzed by an overwhelming feeling of a dark, dreadful, devouring obsession. His mental state must have suffered a greater blow than he had thought, for him to keep suffering from repeated nightmares. Well, that was not an unreasonable result, considering what had happened during the Battle of the Black Skull and after. I should summon Nightmare and let him guard my sleep. He can subjugate a few of these dreams, too. As soon as Sunny thought that, he felt that something was wrong. In the next moment, the raft beneath him lurched, and then, the calming murmur of the flowing water suddenly turned into a deafening roar. Sunny was thrown off the cool wooden surface and tossed into the depths. Feeling water surge into his mouth and nose, he cursed, swiftly sensed the surrounding space, and tried to find the familiar piece of flotsam. It was his only refuge in the mist, after all. The raft was a few meters above him. Struggling against the current, Sunny swam upward. There was something strange, though. The previously dark expanse of water around him was now suffused with light, and the higher he reached, the brighter it became. Finally, Sunny breached the surface and shut his eyes tightly, blinded by sunlight. The ever-present mist was gone. Pushing his body against the current, Sunny swam toward his reliable raft, climbed onto the slick wood, and coughed out a mouthful of water. Then, he brushed his wet hair back and tentatively opened his eyes. After days spent in the twilight of the ghostly mist, it took them a few seconds to adjust to the brightness of the day. Slowly, a breathtaking vista revealed itself from white radiance. Sunny gasped slightly. In front of him, as far as the eye could see, was a vast expanse of clear, sparkling water. Gentle sunlight reflected from its surface, making the whole world seem as if it was littered with gemstones. High above, in the great firmament of the blue sky, 7 suns were shining with beautiful light. One sun was rising from the waters far away to his right, painting the sky and the flowing water with 1,000 shades of soft lilac. The colors of dawn slowly brightened as they gradually turned into a vast expanse of vibrant blue right above Sunny. Far to his left, another sun was drowning in the blood-red water, turning the world into a conflagration of fiery crimson light. The eastern horizon was at dawn, and the western horizon was at dusk. However, it was the middle of the day where Sunny was. He stared at the incredible sight for a while, awed, then shifted slightly and looked back. Behind the raft, the world was exactly the same, there was nothing but water. No sign of the mist remained, as if it had never existed at all. Sunny sighed, then turned north again. Or at least in the direction he chose to call north, considering that the only rising of the 7 suns was to his right. It was also the direction of the current that continued to carry his raft forward. He spent some time taking in the strange, wondrous landscape of the nightmare world. It reminds me of something. Sunny lingered for a few moments, wondering. Then, he took a deep breath. The 7 radiant suns, the vast expanse of clear water. It reminded him of a soul sea. His own would have been similar, if he had radiant soul cores instead of the lightless shadow cores. Of course, he only had 5 of those, and the dark waters of his soul were still and unmoving. His soul sea was also infinitely smaller. There were other differences, too. Still, the world in front of him seemed too eerily beautiful to be a mundane place. Which posed a question. Where the hell am I? There was no desert in sight. There was no black pyramid, either. All Sunny could see was the bright water and the 7 strange suns. It was a known fact that the sky, including the celestial bodies populating it, was not uniform across the different regions of the dream realm. Still, he was pretty sure that he had never been anywhere near a place like that. And there was definitely nothing like that within the nightmare desert. Sunny could reluctantly imagine that the spell had sent him into a past so distant that the desert was still the bottom of a sea. However, even that would not explain the strangeness of the vibrant sky above him. Just what kind of sea did we enter? There was the sound of splashing, and the Sin of Solace calmly walked across the surface of the water to stand atop the wooden raft again. He was perfectly dry and unbothered by the sudden change of scenery. There was a slight smile on his porcelain face. Quite a sight, isn't it? Sunny nodded silently, then suddenly looked intently at the spot where the apparition was standing. The pale wood was dark and wet with water. When the mist had mysteriously disappeared, the raft must have overturned, revealing its bottom side. And that underside was riddled with chaotic, manic lines. They were runes, thousands of them, all blending into one demented tapestry. But not only runes. Sonny recognized some of the crudely carved symbols, but others were entirely unfamiliar to him. With a shudder, he noticed that there were even the familiar letters of the human language. Translated by the spell, all the symbols were repeating the same words: wish, 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 be careful of wish, wish, be careful of what you wish for, wish for, wish for, wish for, wish, 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 be careful of what you wish for, be careful of what you wish, wish, wish for. Sonny froze. The words continued, spilling over the ancient wood as they broke and crisscrossed each other. Just like the single rune on the other side of the raft, it looked like they had been scratched into the incredibly durable wood by someone's nails. The lines were rough and frantic, but deep and forceful. Sonny scowled, feeling an uncontrollable desire to move away from the deranged weave of runes. He felt a sense of dire madness radiating from them, and was irrationally wary of being infected by it. However, there was nowhere to move. The whole raft was covered by the mad litany of twisted symbols. The part of it that he could see, the part where the Sin of Solace was standing calmly, and even the part where he was kneeling were all riddled with them. Suddenly tense, Sonny looked away and glanced at the beautiful expanse of sparkling water once again. Somehow, it didn't seem as dreamy anymore. Chapter 1236, Great River. Be careful of what you wish for. Sonny considered these words despite feeling that thinking about them too hard was, perhaps, not too wise. The aura of madness radiating from the carvings was just too intense to ignore. The sight of the thousands of runes carved into the underside of his makeshift raft was more than a little bit ominous. However, he was not very concerned about how urgent and demented they looked. What really made him wary were the symbols themselves. There were familiar runes, and unfamiliar symbols, too. Although Sonny had extensively studied the various known languages of the dream realm, he could easily admit that there might have been writing systems that he had never seen. Even if it was a little strange that they were not only completely unknown to him, but also bore no passing resemblance to any of the ones he had brushed against before. However, how could there be the letters of human language here? That was what really disturbed him. Have someone from the evacuation army entered this nightmare already? But no, that made no sense. The chances of an awakened from his world entering the same nightmare, finding the exact same piece of flotsam, and carving words from a dozen different languages, some of which even a researcher like Sonny had never stumbled upon, let alone mastered, into the wood before disappearing without a trace were infinitely small. Not to mention that the markings did not seem fresh. They seemed like they had been made a long, long time ago. So, what the hell was the meaning of this? In fact, what the hell was the meaning of this entire nightmare? There had been no vision of reverse time when Sonny entered it. There were apparently millions of challengers who had entered it before him. There was no desert, no pyramid. Instead, there were the 7 suns and a seemingly boundless expanse of water that sparkled under their light. None of it made any sense at all. Even his shadows looked perplexed. With a quiet groan, Sonny rubbed his temples and glanced at the Sin of Solace. What do you think about all this? The pale apparition looked at him with a smile. I am a part of you, so you should already be aware. No. Recognizing his own words, Sonny sighed and turned away. Bastard. The Sin of Solace laughed. Sonny remained motionless for a while, trying not to look at the runes. Then, he studied the 7 suns for some time. There's a lot of weirdness going on, and there's a lot of things that I don't know. So, let's think about what I do know. He was floating on a piece of wood in the middle of a vast body of water. However, that body itself was strange. It was seemingly as large as an ocean, with no land in sight, but composed of clear fresh water. All that water also seemed to be moving, flowing in a certain direction. Fresh water and a uniform current. If Sonny disregarded the unimaginable scope, then wouldn't that make this place a river? A river that was greater than the vastest of seas, but still a river. So, did he know of any rivers like that? Sonny shifted slightly. In fact, I do know about a river that was described as great. A river that existed outside of time and flowed endlessly from the future into the past. The Great River. It was mentioned in the description of the stifled scream. There was also a hint of a dreadful secret being hidden in its estuary. Coincidentally, or maybe not, an estuary of some sort was also mentioned in the description of the Shroud of Graceless Dusk. According to it, the Sibyls had reached the tomb of Ariel and embraced the estuary after the voices of the gods grew silent. That was how they had fallen. If the estuary that the Sibyls had embraced was the estuary of the Great River, where a dreadful secret was hidden, then the Great River and the tomb of Ariel were obviously connected. But how? Why would the spell send Sunny into the waters of the Great River after touching one of the building blocks of the Black Pyramid? And if this was indeed the Great River, then was he actually floating into the past right now? Sunny remained motionless for a while, staring at the sparkling water and the 7 radiant suns. Ah. My head hurts. He was pretty certain that he was right, and this was indeed the Great River that existed outside of time. That would explain why the vision of Ariel's tomb had been interrupted and why he had not seen the usual reversal of time at the start of the nightmare. Probably. However, he still had no idea what being on the Great River meant, and what the nightmare had to do with it. An uncomfortable thought suddenly appeared in his mind. I won't leave the nightmare in the past if I take too long to conquer it, right? It would be really awkward if the current of the Great River took him so far into the past that he appeared in the prehistoric time of the waking world, where there were no nightmare creatures, but plenty of dinosaurs instead. Then again, this river was supposed to exist outside of time. So it was just as likely that, should he survive the nightmare, he would return to the waking world at the exact same moment that he had left it. Come to think of it, if this nightmare had a strange relationship with the flow of time, then it could possibly explain how 13 million challengers, way more than there were awakened in the waking world, had ended up inside of it. Maybe they had entered, and would enter the nightmare at various points in time before Sunny was alive, during his life, and long after he was dead. That was a very confusing and incredibly troublesome thought, though. Because it meant that in all that time, none of them had managed to conquer the nightmare. Sunny shivered. I'm just guessing, though. I might be completely wrong about the whole thing. In fact, it's most likely that I am. He still needed more information. Although Sunny had a very good memory and could easily remember the descriptions mentioning the Great River, he still decided to summon the rune and take another look at them. The shimmering symbols appeared in the air in front of him. Name, Sunless. True name, Lost from Light. Rank, Ascended. Class, Tyrant. N in Shadow Cores, 5-7. Shadow Fragments, 1236-5000. Memories, Silver Bell, Puppeteer's Shroud, Midnight Shard. He searched for the runes of the stifled scream, but then froze. A strange expression appeared on Sunny's face. What? At the end of the long list of his memories, there was a string of runes that had not been there before.